Welcome to Dare a New Belief, a place to discover what is possible for your life after the loss of a loved one, and where you will find inspiration, insight, support, and love, and hopefully a bit of laughter to help you through your day. Now, here's your host, Nada Hogan.
Welcome to Dare a New Belief, where you will find light and life, love and joy, healing, faith, and hope. A place where you get to believe in what is possible for your life. And today I have the great honor to bring back Patricia Pat Sheveland. Pat helps those who are grieving the death of a loved one find peace and purpose to achieve long-term healing. She is a registered nurse, a Spring Forest Qigong certified trainer, and a certified life coach whose sole, S-O-U-L, whose sole purpose is to be a healing guide for those who grieve. As a child born into a grieving family, she brings a unique perspective to family grief and is a compassionate and loving support to those who are mourning the death of their loved one. Pat is also a certified funeral celebrant, serving families who choose funeral and celebrations of life services outside of a formalized church. She is the Amazon best-selling author of How Do I Survive? 7 Steps to Living After Child Loss, and she lives outside of Minneapolis, Minnesota, in a multi-generational home with her family. Thank you so much for being here with us, Pat.
Oh, thank you for having me, Nada. I'm just so honored.
This is so fabulous. So, in part 1, we were talking about you found a couple of pictures, and they happened to be of your brother Greg, who had passed away when he was an infant. But he was 6 years older than you, and you had a deep connection with him, even though he had passed away. So listeners, please go back, because there's no way I can do any justice to try to do a synopsis of that. But that's how everything started off for Pat, as this little 5 or 6 year old girl. And then in 2012, she had this jolt of lightning where she heard Greg say to her, "I was born through you." And now this is where we're going to take off. So what happened after that plane ride with the jolt of lightning? And so here we are. You're back, you're landed, you start talking to your mom, you're sharing the book, Heaven is for Real. Your mom gets to have this connection and knowing that she gets to see Greg again. And then if we can pick it up from there, where I want to talk about how, because experiencing the loss of a child, now my daughter was 18, and I often wondered what would it be like at any age, right? Because one day or old, or 1 week, or 1 month, all of it be like, oh my God, that would be the worst. No, that would be the worst. No, it's just all the worst. So having to hold that in for, if I'm not mistaken, was it 60 years your mom? No, yes. Longer than that. 60 years that your mom had to hold that in, hold all that information in. And then to finally be able to, I love how you said that, allow those feelings to breathe or to have air. So how was it? How did she do that? And it was, I know part of the time, it was just how it was back in the day, but how did she do that? How did she just kind of hold all that inside of her and not explode?
Well, that's a good question. Back in that, no one talked about it. I had asked her at the time, I said, did you and Dad ever talk about Greg? And this whole time of when he died, and she said, nope, never. And she doesn't recall anybody coming and comforting her. She remembers the, what I want to say, the thing at the funeral home, having the wake or whatever they called it.
Okay.
But what happened in my family, and if I can just share real quick, because this is a big part of my mom's story and something that I have seen through grief and people who are struggling with their grief, is my family had layered grief. So before my brother had died, I had a cousin who died. He was not quite 12 years old. And so it would have been a first cousin of mine. He had a ruptured appendix, and it was my grandmother on my dad's side, her first grandchild, and he died abruptly because of this and very unexpectedly. And that was on a Saturday. A few weeks after that, his mother, my Aunt Eleanor, my dad's half-sister, she died unexpectedly from a brain aneurysm, also on a Saturday. Then, a few weeks after that, my great-grandmother died, my dad's grandmother, who lived with Bobby and Eleanor and her family. She died. She was older, so probably of old age. I'm thinking probably from a broken heart. But then she passed away, also on a Saturday. So my mom said you'd never wanted to answer the phone on a Saturday. Then all of a sudden, here my brother went and got his baby shots. I believe it must have been on a Friday. He got very sick immediately, and at 2 a.m. in the morning on a Saturday, he had died. So here they had four in their immediate family. So when I talked to my mom about that, I said, I feel so bad that you felt so abandoned and didn't feel that you had that comfort around you. But then I walked her through saying, however, look at what happened. There was so much layered grief. I don't know that Dad or his mother, your mother-in-law had it even in them. They were in such shock over all these deaths. And then, unfortunately, she felt robbed of all the compassion, and because everybody was in a fog, terrible fog. So that was a very, and then she always said that she was strange. I must have been strange because people didn't come around. I must have been strange. But she had a friend, her friend Pat, who came to her after a bit and said, you need to snap out of this a little bit. You have 2 little boys that need you. So I'm assuming that my mom probably had a pretty significant depression and breakdown after Greg had died. And so she had a 3-year-old and a 15-month-old, and she needed to take care of them. And she said she was very grateful for this friend of hers who did it with great compassion, because that kind of woke her up like, okay, I do have to go on living.
Yeah. Wow.
So then she just went on with her life. And just didn't talk about it until Greg would have been 60.
Wow. It's so amazing. And I know it reminds me when my uncle died. This would have been, I don't know, 1974, 75. Or maybe it was my grandmother. And they had covered up all of the mirrors and the clocks. Like and the blinds were drawn. It's so dark in the house, and it was the world just stopped. And I was still fairly young and thinking, oh my God, this is like the worst feeling I have ever felt. And it was almost like making yourself stay in that feeling and not doing it differently. There is no other way to do it. And this was a grown person. And so there was conversation after that, but my heart just aches for your mother when you said, like, I just couldn't imagine not having support and people coming over and helping. And yes, and I would imagine a great depression, and then having 2 little kids, little ones that you're having to look after at the same time. So, oh my goodness. So you and your mom start these conversations, and then what are you discovering when you're talking with your mom? What all are you learning?
Well, I think the circumstances of Greg's death, but what I learned was, and I was studying to be a coach at the time, even though I was a corporate executive, and I'm a nurse, so I'm always curious about some of the psychology and that type of thing. But talking to my mom, I think the learning that I had was all these deep-seated feelings that never got to be expressed. Yeah. And I coined the phrase failed grief, because I felt she wasn't able to utilize her grief, or my dad and their grieving process, to find healing. It was just buried along with my brother when he was buried. So, we talked about, she had some real deep anger at, the nuns at the hospital, and how my mom found Greg when she went there after he had died, that she felt that they didn't love him and care for him as if she would have been there when he died. The abandonment, where everybody is kind of in their own stuff and she had no one coming around and comforting her. The guilt, oh my gosh, the guilt. And as a mom, I'm sure, having gone through the death of a child, I think that's probably the number one thing that really, what could I have done? Because as parents, we want to protect our children all the way. And so she had so much guilt. And so what I learned from her is how to kind of unwrap that guilt and reframing it. So I walked her through what I saw as an objective bystander to help her see what happened in a different way and how it wasn't anything that she did that caused him to die. She did everything any loving mom would do.
Right.
And so that helped her to release some of that. But like I said, it was just giving it air, because when we hold these feelings inside, it just eats us up. Absolutely. In one way or another. And so my mom I love her dearly. She lives with me. She's going to be 96 early in July, on July 5th. Just adore her, but she never could smile widely. She never had that joy in life. And I really contribute a lot of that as to how she had that failed grief way back when. Yeah.
Yeah. And I love that. That's such a beautiful term, failed grief. I mean, that's palpable. You can feel that. So since your mother lives with you now, and I know this from a conversation, that it is your granddaughter, if I'm not mistaken, granddaughter, that sits at the table, and your mom and her, those souls are talking to one another, correct? Can you share that with us?
Oh, yes. So this is where I've seen the absolute true healing in my mother, and I'm so happy that it's happened before her transition.
Yeah.
Yes, we have 4 generations. My son and daughter-in-law own the home. My mother has a mother-in-law suite. My husband and I have the lower level, and so we all sit and have a community dinner every night. And so my granddaughter, she's now getting close to 15 months, but she sits across the table from my mom in her height chair, and first they'll look at each other, and Grace, my granddaughter, will start talking in an unintelligible voice. We don't know what she's saying, but my mom connects with her, and they connect eye to eye. Yeah. And it's just so powerful. I mean, you can just feel this communication, and my mom grins. She shows her teeth. I've never seen this my whole life. I mean, I'm almost 62 years old, never have seen her grin a wide, joyous smile until she has been in connection with Grace. And so I believe that Grace is really my mom's final healing of finding true joy through the voice and eyes of a babe.
Oh, it's just, you can feel that. You can feel that. And that energy, and it's because that's exactly how I look at it. And that's how I look at it, is that it's all energy, that we're energy. It's just a transition from this physical plane into another plane. But that energetics, the essence of us, the us, the real us, communicates on such a soul level. And to be able to see that and to feel that, and then to experience that healing for your mom, to be able to see that smile where you actually see her teeth, is just like, oh my God, it's so beautiful. It just brings tears to my eyes. It's so beautiful. It is so beautiful.
I got tears.
Oh, yeah. It's like, oh my goodness. Oh my goodness. It's wow. I'm so grateful that your brother connected with you to let you know, and then all of the things that have happened afterwards, and especially the healing for your mom, to be able to in her final days, to be able to transition healed and maybe continuing to heal. But I don't know, I think that essence soul is 100% perfect, but at least this part of us that's conscious gets to know it differently, and to be able to give those feelings breath. It's so beautiful. Pat, I want to shift into the book, How Do I Survive? 7 Steps to Living After Child Loss. So how did you come about, because you have not personally lost a child, how did you come